Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar, Retooling Internal Audit for an AI-Driven Future. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Joe McCafferty, editor and publisher of Internal Audit 360, and I'll be your host for this webinar. Today's event is presented along with Supervizor. Supervizor is an AI audit analytics platform that connects directly to any ERP, runs hundreds of pre-built audit routines to flag anomalies and control gaps, and uses AI to turn findings into real business recommendations. Internal audit leaders at IKEA, Lacoste, Michelin, and Borg Warner use it to cut time on manual testing and spend more of it on advisory work. You can visit supervizor.com for more, and I encourage you to do that. There's some great resources there. We also want to thank our partner ACE. ACE is Audit Consulting and Education. The organization delivers audit education live and virtually and provides quality audit consulting services to organizations. You can visit auditconsultingeducation.com for more on them. We have an excellent audience today. More than 2,000 internal audit and audit leaders have registered. And right now we have more than 1,000 of you from all over the world here with us live. So thanks very much for attending. Before I introduce our speakers today, I just want to go over some housekeeping notes. Today's webinar is scheduled for one question and answers at the end if we have time. Please ask your questions as they occur to you by using the questions tab on your control panel. Questions will be kept anonymous and we'll get to as many as we can. If we don't get your question, we'll do our best to answer them by email. If you're having any audio problems, don't forget to check your volume level. And if they continue, you may need to log out and back in again. We always advise that Chrome is the preferred browser for GoToWebinar, the platform that we're using today. We'll also be doing some polling questions, so please disable any pop-up blockers you were using. If you have difficulty responding to a polling question for any reason, put your answer in the questions field on your control panel and you'll still get credit for it. We'll be offering CPE credit to those who joined into the live webinar for at least 50 minutes and answered the polling questions. We'll send you a CPE certificate by email following the webinar. We'll get those out in the next day or so, so please allow some time for those to arrive. We'll also be sending a copy of the slide presentation, which is available right now in the handout section on your control panel. We'll be sending that and a copy of a video version of today's webinar to review at your convenience. Those will be emailed out in the next day or so after the event. So let's meet our speakers. Today we have with us Trent Russell. Trent is founder of Greenskies Analytics, where he develops an analytics strategic roadmaps for internal audit teams. He's also the host of the Audit Podcast. Please check that out. It's fantastic. We also have with us Celia Viguer. She is U.S. General Manager for Supervizor. She works with CAEs to bring continuous audit analytics into their organizations while building and leading U.S. operations for Supervizor. So let's look at our agenda for today's webinar. First, we're going to look at how the internal audit toolset is changing with the advent of AI over the last few years. Then we'll consider the skills and competencies that internal auditors need today to leverage AI in their organizations. Next, we'll look at a roadmap for AI adoption, including the talent, technology, and process redesign that's needed. And finally, we'll cover how to get your data AI ready. So before we begin, we're going to jump right in with a polling question. Let's move to that. Second here. All right. So you should see the first polling question of today. Where would you say you are in terms of implementing artificial intelligence in internal audit processes? A, we use AI in just about everything we do. B, we use AI selectively but often. C, we use AI only a little in internal audit. D, we don't use AI at all in internal audit. Or E, you're not sure. So Trent and Celia, I'm expecting a pretty broad variety of answers here. From what I understand, people are a little all over the map on where they are on their AI journey. Is that the case, would you say?
Yeah, I saw that initially whoever jumped on we use AI in just about everything we do. I think like 3 people all hit that at once, so it spiked, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of advanced people on here. But it's starting to settle back down. You can kind of see the bell curve, and I think that's pretty normal and natural for anecdotally the people that we talk to anyway.
Maybe those quick responses are bots who want to, convince us that everybody should be using AI. So I'm just going to give a few moments here. If you haven't answered the polling question, if you could please do so, we'll give you a few more moments on that. Yeah, I mean, I would expect a kind of a bell curve with a few people who are very advanced, a few people who haven't really started yet, and the meat of it kind of in the middle, just kind of learning to adopt it and how they can use it, for great advantage of internal audit. All right, it looks like most of those are in. I'm going to close that out now and we'll take a look at our results. And yeah, it looks pretty much what we expected. 7% are using it about just everything we do. That's fantastic to see. About a third where most people are using it selectively. People are starting to use it more often, of course. We use AI only a little internal audit, 41%, and then 13% don't use it at all, or 5% aren't sure. So definitely, as we suspected, there's people who are just getting started. So I'm going to close this out and I'm going to hand things over to you, Celia.
Thanks, Joe. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. No, very aligned with the results of this poll. It sounds like a majority of the audience is either not using AI or very selectively. So hopefully today's session will be beneficial from everyone. Just as an introduction, I wanted to come back to this survey the IIA did earlier this year. They surveyed over 7,000 internal audit professionals for their Vision 2035 report. And the key takeaway was that as AI advances, internal auditors will adopt more technology and their role will shift from compliance to strategic advisory. Today, the reality is that most internal audit teams I speak with, at least, still spend the majority of their time on compliance testing. We have this 74%, 26% ratio right now on this survey, but hopefully this is going to be rebalanced a little bit in the next few months and years. And only 25% of audit teams are actually using AI today. So pretty aligned with the poll we just had. So thinking about the reasons for that behind these numbers, I feel like the first one is a lack of budget, not the lack of ambition, but also not having the right tech stack, which is the topic of today and that the topic we wanted to expand today. It comes with the technology stack. It comes with the talents that you now need in your teams to actively implement AI use cases. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Not just to adopt AI for the sake of adopting AI, but really to evolve into that role of strategic advisory that CAs and internal audit teams can now have. So starting with the different technologies internal audit team use, I'm just going to briefly present that, and then I will hand it over to you, Trent, because I know you have a lot to say on this one. But basically, looking at every type of technology internal audit has adapted over the years, I feel like AI brings new opportunity on each one of these boxes, starting with productivity or really the Microsoft Office stack. Before we were seeing a lot of internal audit teams drafting work papers, decks, spreadsheet on Excel from scratch every time, or from the model from last year, right? That you have to update constantly. Now, anyone who has Copilot licenses can have Copilot inside their Office app, directly in the Word document, directly in the PowerPoint, or in Excel. So when you're reviewing it, you're actually co-creating the document with the AI. And you don't have to start from a blank page. You don't need to copy paste. You can just create, just much more efficient. I personally use the same with Claude app, but it's really the same use cases. You can help it for design. You don't have to redo every format that you need to do. And you can also use it for reviewing, challenging you, go further in each one of your points. Super helpful. Second line is the system of record. So GRC is generally the first software internal audit teams buy themselves. They have the rest from their IT generally. When it comes to GRC, really the platform is where you log and track your work traditionally. But with AI now, you have a lot of GRCs that are including AI modules that enables users to flag gaps, suggest next steps, proactively draft reports for you. So it just becomes more of a system of action, not just a system of record and task tracker in a way. Following one is data access. So not really a tool itself, but a necessary step to automate testing for sure. The traditional word for that is really you ask your IT for an extract of a data. You wait for it, you test a sample out of it, you hope it's representative. Today, if you really want to leverage AI to its full potential, you need to start with direct data access. You need to have access to the data. You need to be able to leverage it continuously if possible in order to really perform full population testing and get real insights out of it. When it comes to audit analytics and insights, before AI, you really had to have, and I'm sure Trent, you're going to speak about that, you really had to have someone with specific skill sets in your team to develop queries and develop dashboards and get the data and format it and transform it. I feel like with AI now, this is becoming less required. You can have a lot of AI-based prompting for scripting an analytics, for example, or build a dashboard, help you build a dashboard. We also, and I will show you that later in this webinar, you can leverage AI to get insights out of your data, not just surface exceptions, which we found very helpful. So just create a lot of opportunities for teams that don't necessarily have the budget or the team size to have a dedicated audit analytics team to actually leverage these tools. And then last but not least, interviews and walkthrough. Pretty obvious, but like I feel like the time where we had to write down all of our notes with pen and paper is kind of coming to an end now. You can record every session, can have access to transcript, and you can let an AI agent really organize your follow-up with the person you're interviewing. So super helpful for internal auditors. So that was just a broad view of the tech stack before and after AI. But Joe, I'm passing it back to you because I know you have a lot of interesting questions for Trent on this one.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Celia. So, when you look at this table, Trent, which layers do tubes usually get first? If someone's listening in that hasn't really done much yet, like where would you tell them to look first? What are some of the starting points for us?
Most teams start with productivity, and if I rephrase that as efficiencies, that's kind of like the balance that we always talk about with CAEs when it comes to AI. Like you can go efficiencies, you can go insights. Those are kind of the two buckets in general. And by and large, just what internal audit, where we want to be. Like we want to be more efficient. We also want to be able to provide insights. So especially for the SOX or, hey, we have to do all this, regulatory work every quarter, year, whatever it is, the productivity or efficiency gains are where they tend to hang out. I think it speaks back to Celia on the previous slide, teams wanting to move towards more strategic advisory work. And so like the easiest ish low hanging fruit, what can we knock out is, hey, all this repeatable work, let's get it knocked out. That'll free us up to do the strategic advisory work or even just additional operational audits. There's a lot of teams who they're like, we do, 90 to 100% of what we do is SOX. And being able to automate that at a pretty high clip to be able to do operational audits, to be able to do more strategic advising is where a lot of teams start and where they want to go. If I was looking at where to start, again, if you're like SOX heavy, I think efficiencies make a lot of sense. Even within SOX, though, I still feel like management and the board and the like would be more interested in insights. Insight I'm defining as, hey, here's something about the business that you didn't know that we found, and you can take an action on this and we can all be better for it effectively. Like the organization could be better. So that's kind of how I describe insights. And so I feel like management, board, etc., audit committee, like if you can bring them something that they didn't know about the organization that is going to make the organization better, let's go do that more so, as opposed to, hey, we did another audit. And of course, insights come from audits, absolutely. But in my work and in my experience within internal audit, it's stretching I'll do the math one other day. Almost 20 years. It's still like, hey, look at this thing we found that you didn't know that was going on, as opposed to here's another audit report. That's not doing justice to the audits themselves.
Sure.
But nonetheless, that's where I would tend to hang out, is let's get insights.
Now, moving along, as we kind of start to involve internal audit in AI and internal audit more and more, like what's the one piece here on this table you think that will have the biggest impact in the next year or two? Like, take us out a little bit, and what's going to like really change things?
Yeah, I think if we, again, productivity equals efficiency, it is not unbelievable to be able to say, all right, we have risk assessment, planning, testing, reporting. Like, we just summed it up in those 4 buckets. We work with teams who have planning practically fully automated. There's still human in the loop, like you have to have it. If not, it ends up being not fantastic. But and so I think in that sense, and this is more operational, but obviously within SOX also, to be able to do that, I think is going to change things a ton. And even then, if it's, hey, we're good to go now, SOX is in a really good spot. Even the testing, there's some teams POCing with testing, but typically I advise against it, just because of model drift and the amount of change that goes into that. And if you're actually building a piece of software, you want engineers doing that. So anyway, I think productivity, efficiency across regulatory SOX type audits for sure. And then again, over those next 2 years, to me, it's data and being able to get insights from the data.
Sure. One thing that you said there, I just want to follow up with one quick question, and it's a phrase I'm hearing more and more: the human in a loop. I know it's probably exactly what it sounds like, but can you just tell us a little more about why that's becoming such an important phrase?
Yeah, and I'll give you maybe a non-audit example. So maybe I shouldn't say this. It's a secret. We're taking our kid to Disney for the first time. And just the amount of planning that has to go into that is absolutely insane. I had no idea. I'm still not going to know. That's not my area of expertise. I'm not doing that. Just told my wife, I was like, here, just use my chat subscription. It's like, top tier. Have it do all that for you. And then, there's all these like people who will do basically your planning for you when you go on those trips. So like I do 2 people who they go 3 times a year. They know the ins and outs. You can pay them to do it. And so I said, do it all. You don't know if it's going to be 100% correct. It might have an opening gate time wrong. Might have a restaurant wrong, something like that. And I said, human in the loop it by sending it to one of them, have them review it and make sure that it's okay. So basically have the AI do as much as it can, and then have an actual person who can apply the judgment and can validate it and go like, yep, this is good to go.
Right. So we're not just leaving these things on their own. We're providing some oversight. I want to move on. Celia, I believe we're moving on to the next polling question, if I'm not mistaken. Excellent. All right. So we're going to handle our second polling question of the day. Let me get that out to you. All right. And this is something that we're starting to talk about, but I think there's a lot of meat to cover here. What's the biggest barrier to becoming an AI-ready audit function? Is it A, limited skills, constraints, C, technology limitations, D, data quality, or E, governance concerns? And I know if we offered F, all of the above, we'd probably a lot of that. But we really want to hone in on, what is the biggest barrier? Is it the technology, the tools that you want to have? Is it the skill set of the team? So let's take a few moments to answer that. And again, I think all of these are things that organizations struggle with. Pinpointing the ones that are the biggest barriers is probably a little bit difficult, but anything we expect to see here that might surprise you? Celia, why don't we, I think let's give them a few more seconds. I think most of them have filled out. If you haven't, please go ahead and do that. And then Celia, why don't we look at the results and we'll see if there's anything surprising in those results. So if you can get your responses in, we'll just, if we had some Jeopardy music, we'd be playing that right now, but we don't have copyright for that. All right, let's go ahead.
No, sorry, commenting live. I feel like what I'm hearing the most on a daily basis is budget constraints. Technology limitation, I fully agree with the audience. It's not the topic anymore. You have a lot of tech out there that does amazing stuff. So great to see that people are aware of them.
And yeah, it looks like a pretty broad variety of answers here. Number one is governance concerns. That's a little surprising to me.
Right.
I think when we've talked about this in the past, we're usually seeing the skills on the audit team was a big barrier. So maybe there's been advancement in that. Budget constraints, as we all know, management is pretty big on this. So I think they're ready to give the resources that are needed. Anything, Trent, that you see that surprises you in the results?
The governance one was a surprise. So it could
Yep.
be maybe certain industries are still lagging because of governance concerns. And so they can't like fully adopt as where lowerly regulated teams are able to kind of grip it and rip it. So that one was surprising, but I guess considering the audience, it shouldn't be too surprising.
Sure. And I know data quality is always an issue, whether it was analytics that we were doing in the past or AI moving forward. And I know we're going to talk a good bit about that later in our presentation. So I'm going to close this down and turn things back to you, Celia.
To Trent, actually, I think that's a.
All right.
Yeah, so this is probably one of the bigger questions we get asked, like what's the future of internal audit? How do we prepare, things of that nature? So that's largely what I just wanted to hit on here. And I think that where we are now, like we have a good idea of where auditors need to be in the next year, but I think it's beyond that is where it's going to start to get complicated. We're going to have auditors with no audit background who are acting as senior auditors instead of junior auditors. And like, how do we prepare them to review a work paper since they never executed in the work paper? So those are the things that a lot of people are still dealing with. But that's largely how we wanted to set this up.
Got it. So I had some questions on this, Trent, that I wanted to talk a little bit about. When you hear the phrase AI ready audit, internal audit function, like what does that mean to you?
You have to have the tool. So there's still some, like we talked about earlier, some industries where that's still an issue. You have to be able to, I guess we can go back to the governance piece. I just have, the idea of safe in there and being safe with these tools. But I think that goes back to the governance need that was in the previous poll question. So that's great. AI literacy at a high level, just being able to prompt. And so like we think about that productivity slide earlier, we're talking about using Microsoft tools. Like I think that's the absolute bare minimum. And then prompt. And then what I would just say is like a better actual prompt, and then maybe prompt with a knowledge source or like some kind of RAG in there, chatbots, and then agents and autonomous agents. So that's kind of the maturity model on like a skill on 7/21/2026 as it stands right now. And then just knowing like how the basics of LLMs work is extremely important. We spend a lot of time explaining that to clients that we work with. Helps add context to why did I get these results and like what's actually going on without getting too technical and in the weeds.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is, if you're a chief audit executive and you have the green light from manager, a new person or a couple people on the team, I'm going to guess that those interviews probably look a little different than they did even just a year ago or 2 years ago. What are the skills interview that when you're talking to someone to bring them on the team, what are the skills that you're looking for? What are the backgrounds that we might be looking for more that we hadn't maybe in the past?
I would still want someone with audit background and if it's a new hire with no audit background, like fresh out of school or something like that, or someone making a career change, being able to understand or identify if they are curious and if they care. For me, those are the only two things I care about. So like we work with teams and there's people who are not super tech geniuses, but they are very involved with the audit community. So they actually care. They ask a lot of questions as well when we work with them. And I can go like, all right, you're not where maybe your peers are right now relative to like technical competency, but it's not going to take you very long to get there because you actually care about it and you're curious. And that's just about all it takes. And so those would be the two traits. And Joe, like you mentioned the podcast, I appreciate you saying that. And talking to other CAEs and just like interviewing them, curiosity has been the number one trait. Like we ask, what's the number one thing you look for? It's almost always it's curiosity. So those are the two things that I would look for.
Got it. It sounds like to me it's like as much as things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
We're still looking for those things that make auditors great auditors, like people skills, curiosity that you mentioned. I know maybe a few years ago, the term data scientist became kind of a buzzword, and everybody wanted a data scientist on the team. And I'm sure that's still important. And, we need the diversity of skills on the internal audit team. But I like that you're focusing on that idea that, there are still things that make people good internal auditors. One last question here in this section. What would you think is the bigger gap right now? Technical skills like prompting, data that we talked about, or judgment-based skills like knowing when to trust an output?
I think right now it's tech skills. I think that's going to, we're going to catch up to that pretty quick. And then it's going to fall back to the judgment, like I was talking about. So the people don't have the backgrounds like, yeah, we can write this crazy good prompt, or we can develop, some agent or whatever that is, because all that's getting a little easier every couple of months. But it took me a solid year of, working external audit, a lot of hours and testing 100 plus, probably 175 applications a year before I was like, oh, that's the judgment thing that people keep talking about. Auditor judgment. I get it now. So it takes a lot of reps to develop that. It's not super easy. It's not a webinar that you can take and just develop it. So I think long term, it's going to be the judgment piece.
Right. And that becomes almost maybe instinctual over time. Well, I think in the interest of the time here, we're going to move on to our next section. I believe we now have a polling question again. Excellent. Polling question number 3. Let's send that out. All right. And again, this kind of dovetails on about which AI-related skill is most important for internal auditors to develop. Is it A, evaluating AI outputs and identifying errors? B, data analytics and data literacy? C, understanding AI governance and controls? D, learning to use AI tools, including the prompt writing that Trent was just referring to? Or E, change management and adapting audit processes? If you could take just a few moments to fill that out. And I guess, in some ways, the AI-related skills can be different at different levels on the team. I'm going to guess that if you are a chief audit executive or in a more senior role, that change management and adapting audit processes is probably important to you. If you're more, evaluating the data itself, you're going to want to work on things like prompt writing and data analytics skills. All right, so in the interest of time, we're going to close that out pretty soon. If you haven't answered, if you could please get those answers in. We're just going to give a few more moments, and then we'll take a look at our results. All right. Close that out, take a look at the results. And it looks like a third of you said evaluating AI-generated outputs and identifying errors, 33%. We know that that's a very important aspect to this. The tools are still providing, what we call hallucinations and other errors, but I believe that those are getting a lot better there, so we can talk a little bit about that. And then D, learning to use AI tools, including the prompt writing, not surprising there. Less so on the change management and the AI governance and controls. Interesting that a lot of folks pointed out that AI governance was a big barrier, but it's not necessarily the skill sets they're looking for. So there might be a little disconnect there, and we can talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to close this out and hand things back over to you, Celia.
We're going to talk about AI roadmap and how to put in place a great AI roadmap, and Trent's going to cover that part.
Yeah, and the reason Joe keeps saying, based on time, we're going to move it along is because I keep talking too much. And so I will be quick on this one. I'll be quick on this. So basically, this is from the IA standards, the newest ones that came out a couple years ago. And the reason I have those areas highlighted, internal audit strategy, I'm not going to read the bullet points to you, all of them. I'm just going to do one. That third bullet point on the right, the introduction and application of technology when it improves the internal audit's function, efficiency, and effectiveness. So basically it's saying, hey, we need an internal audit. You need a strategy, and it needs to have tech considered in there. And a lot of people have different opinions on how a strategy should look, but you should hit on people, process, technology, and governance across that as well. And so this is extremely important, not only because this is like the area we hang out in the most, but like when we worked with clients, we would go in, we would like develop a solution for them, train them on how to do something, whatever the case was, like whatever service we were providing. And then we would effectively roll off, and then we would talk to them, make sure everything's still going well. And inevitably things would start to just taper off. And that's largely because there wasn't a strategy in place to keep it going. So that's when we kind of made the decision, like we need to help folks in this area. So if nothing else, if you want to abide by, adhere to the IA standards, you do need to have some kind of strategy with specifically around technology as well in place. All right, I think I've caught us back up on time and got us on track, so I'll be quiet.
Fantastic. But we have some good questions in this area as well, so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Trent, would you say that becoming AI ready for an internal audit team, is it more about technology, people, or processes? Is it all three? Where should the focus be?
I think if you asked like 1,000 people, they would pick between people and process. Like there would be a divide there. Some might pick tech, but I think for the most part, it's people and process. And for me, I'm about process. Like that bleeds into the strategy piece. Like if you have a process around technology, you're going to be good to go. If you have a process around people, hiring, upskilling, etc., you're going to be good to go. So as long as you have like an actual process, and by that I mean it's documented at some level. It's not just like ad hoc. I think we're supposed to be doing it this way, or
Right.
We've had the same person in this role for 20 years, so they know it. But if they leave and somebody else comes in, all that knowledge is lost. Like it needs to be a formalized process.
And that if we kind of flip between people and process, this isn't just something that's going to happen on its own. We can't just say, hey, everybody go out there and start using that AI thing. We want to manage this. And I know that's, where the process comes in, but also connects very much to the people because, you can't do anything that's not, communicated out. But it sounds like we want to be pretty strategic about this and pretty purposeful.
Right. Yeah. And even I could hear the other side of the argument. You have to have the right people with the right processes or to create the right processes. So I could go either way on that, but I'm a process guy.
Got it. And then, talk a little bit about what are some of the strategies for getting better access to data in organizations tend to have a siloed approach to data. So now we're going to get into a little bit more of the data discussion here. And I know we saw on the barriers that is a common barrier to really, a lot of the technology advancements that have come over time. We all know that expression, garbage data in, garbage out. Talk a little bit about the strategies that we can use to get access to that data.
So if you think about data owners, is usually how they're referred to. There's somebody that owns the data. So if we want something from them, maybe just asking for it, depending on the culture of the organization you're in, it's cool and they give it to you. Most of the time, there's a lot of pushback or some degree of pushback on that because they own it. So maybe they don't necessarily just want to give it out, especially if it's PII or something like that. It can be brutal. But if like interpersonal lives, if you want something from someone, you can pay them for it, although that's not very practical in this example. Or you can have a good relationship with that person and build the relationship and then get that from them. And so I preach there's a process for getting access to data, but if you have a good relationship with the data owner, and a lot of that comes down to empathizing with the data owner. Again, like it's theirs. They're the ones that's supposed to protect it and they approve who can and can't get it. And so empathizing with them, letting them know, like from the jump, this is the objective. This is what we're trying to do. And asking them, like, this is part of our process, going like, hey, here's the objective. This is what we're trying to get done. Here's the data we think we need. You're the expert in this area. Does that sound right to you? And a lot of times they'll go, I know you think you need that data, but it's actually over here and we call it something else. And so that's what you're going to need to get this done. They know more about it than we ever will. So empathizing with them and again, building the relationship are the non-technical aspects to getting the data that you need.
And I think it's a message that's coming down from the top as well, is that we're not going to hoard our data anymore and keep it to ourselves, that we need to like share data throughout the organization, connect data in different ways so that we can really mine it for these great insights that we can find. I believe we removed. Go ahead, Trent.
No, I was just saying, hopefully that is the case, but there's still a lot of people that struggle to get, especially if it's sensitive. It can be a struggle to get that.
Of course. Right, and then we also have to worry about access controls, making sure that it's available to the right people at the right time. I believe we are moving to the last polling question of the day. All right, so let's move that out now. Polling question number 4. Confident are you that your audit function will be AI ready within the next year? Are you very confident, somewhat confident, neutral, around a 50-50 chance, somewhat doubtful it will be AI ready within the next year, or very doubtful? So, we should get some really good insights on where our audience is based on where they believe they will be in the next 12 months. Every conference around internal audit over the last, I would say, 18 months, AI has been front and center. The message been very clear. You need to be there. If you're not, you're going to get run over. So I think most of the organizations have digested that message. So I'd be pretty surprised to see if they're not somewhat or very confident that they'll be able to get there where they need to be. Now, we can talk a little bit about what that goal is. And Trent, you talked a little bit about what a mature AI-ready internal audit function looks like. But let's see on our results here. I'm just going to give everyone just a few more moments. If you have not gotten those in, if you could please send those in. Most of you have put them in, but I'm going to give just a few more seconds if you haven't. Please answer that last question. This is the last one of today, so we won't be bugging you anymore with polling questions. But let's take a look at our results. Yeah, so kind of what we expected. There's really almost a curve here. Probably a little more questions I thought we would see, or maybe we would like to see. A third of you are neutral. They're saying about 50-50 that will be there. Hopefully, webinars like this will get you there or help you along the way. 15% are somewhat doubtful. The lowest one, 9%, very doubtful. So that's great to see. And then only 13% very confident. 30% somewhat confident. Any thoughts you guys want to add here on this?
I thought it'd be split between A and B. So
Yeah, that's right.
C taking it, yeah, as far as it did was a little surprising. I think, like, I know, again, industry specific, people have been slow to get tools, but I know even those industries are starting to, like, most that I talk to go, we're going to be ready by the end of the year, at least tool wise. And I think a lot of people still have confidence in if we get the tools, we should be pretty good to go.
Got it. All right, do we want to move on to the presentation here? I'm going to close that out.
Yeah, so I can cover that. That's the last part of our session for today. It's about the data. So we touched a little bit on that with you, Trent. We also saw, I think, at the beginning for the first poll question that was one of the main barriers for the audience. So happy to dig a little bit more into that. So what does it mean when we say get your data AI ready? Well, the roadmap Trent just talked about is great, but heavily rely on your on the ability of your AI agents to actually access your enterprise data. So even if you have a good relationship with the data owner, if you don't have that at scale, really any agents or use case you're going to build depends on how much you can refresh this data on. So coming back to this list of technology we saw at the beginning, I don't think audit analytics is really separate from AI. The stronger your analytics foundation is, for me, the most powerful your AI use case will be. If you have a very strong and successful audit analytics program, you're going to be able to get a lot of insights out of your AI. And all of these insights are what are going to enable you to drive these advisories that we talked about and ultimately help pulling your organization forward. So what does really clean data mean? So I found that from Gartner. Clean AI is really a precondition. Clean data is really a precondition for any AI project. Joe, you mentioned garbage in, garbage out, but as AI agents, if they run on messy data, they just also gonna produce mistakes at scale. So it's very important topic. Gartner, I think, calls this shift from the tech stack to the trust stack. So it's not just about the technology, it's about how reliable is your technology and how reliable is your data underneath. So as you can see here in their little diagram, they put like analytics and BI, data science and AI on the same foundation, and below you need a strong infrastructure when it comes to data. Data layers that is standardized to perform relevant data analytics, basically. And the numbers really back this up, because right now I feel still half of the AI projects in corporate America are failing because of data readiness. So I think we're going to make a lot of good progress in there in the next few years, but there's really something to solve before being able to fully adopt agentic AI. What does it mean for you in internal audit? So auditors are not really the data quality owners in a way. It was never a full-time job for internal auditors, but in practice, what I see really on a day-to-day basis is it's often audits that end up flagging there is a data problem in some processes. So I feel like internal audit can be one of these functions that actually push the other functions to prioritize data cleanup and drive real strategic initiatives around data standardization and data accessibility. I feel also there are a lot of opportunities. So Trent mentioned that if you have a good relationship with a data owner, it's going to facilitate your life for sure. I don't think you need to expect and wait until you have the perfect data lake program fully mature to start analyzing your data. It's going to take years. So if you wait for that moment to happen, you're going to be very late. If you have one good relationship with the data owner, if you have somehow access to some type of data, I would say prioritize that, get it as often as you can, and then build your AI use cases on top of that. Show a little bit pilots and what type of insights you can get out of this specific type of data, inspire the other function, and go to the next topic. This is really what we worked on with Supervizor on specifically financial data. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But it's really the same model that I think you can apply to any type of data sales, operational data. When it comes to finance data, what Supervizor enabled our users to do is really to gather your financial data in the same place in order to make it AI ready and then be able to exploit it and get insights out of it. So it really works in 4 main steps, and I'm going to be brief here. But first, it comes with the data. So you can implement direct APIs to your ERP systems. That means direct integration with the data. That means you have continuous access of it. From there, what Supervizor had to build and what we had to build when we built this technology is this little piece of data standardization we talked about. So what the software does is that it brings all of your data from different ERP systems and it just stores it in the same format. Sounds very simple, but really this unified data model is what you're going to leverage for your analytics, what our routines going to leverage for risk detection, but also what AI can rely on in order to produce accurate outputs. So I feel like what we've built for financial data is very relevant for any type of data here, standardized formats in order for the AI to have accurate answers. So that was the point 1 and 2 on here. But then after that, we have specifically for internal audit, hundreds of preset routines that are designed to catch risks and surface exceptions. And then we leverage AI to actually get insights out of those exceptions. So really strong data foundation, get your data AI ready, and then hundreds of checks that not only are performing anomaly detection, but also re-enriching what your AI has access to in terms of knowledge, not only raw data, but also anomalies. So your insight analysis can be more powerful than just on raw data. I'm going to show you a couple of prompts and examples of that. And I included this slide so you have it in your deck, but I'm not going to spend any time here. So we're going to start with how does it look getting your data AI ready, and then showing you a couple of prompts you can use in order to get insights out of your data. I'm going to do that in the next 5 minutes, and then we will move to Q&A. All right, so let's start with the data problem. Just wanted to illustrate when I spoke about this unified data ledger, how does it look and how it can help you with your AI use cases. So as I mentioned, here I'm in Supervizor, but really looks like a data lake. So if you have a data lake, that can look like that. You have here direct connection with your ERP system. And what is important here in Supervizor is that Supervisor is going to import all of your transactional data from multiple ERP systems. And as I mentioned, store it in the same format. So here you can see some Oracle lines, some SAP lines. If you have multiple ERP systems, you're going to have millions of lines in here, hundreds of millions for big groups, sometimes billions of lines that corresponds to transactions. But what is important is that each transaction is standardized the same way. And you can see here the title of the columns are neither SAP specific or Oracle specific. They are just general language for AI to understand what is each column about. So here I have this huge data lake of transactional jet entries here, but I have the same in AP, in AR, in a lot of different supplier master data. From here, what is important to understand is that for internal audit teams, it means have direct access to data. I can build a dashboard from here. I can build a routine. I can filter. I can look for a specific supplier. If I hear in an interview about a specific risk, I can look for it directly in my data lake. So when I talk about having access to data, this is literally an example of it, like just being able to manipulate and have access to continuous data. So that's the first thing before even going into risk detection. But one of the key things that we do as Supervizor is instead of having each one of our clients have to build their own checks, we also offer preset checks across different areas of risks. And so here I have a global view basically of a lot of different type of risks. We have hundreds of preset routines. They are generally categorized into business cycles, so procure to pay, order to cash for the revenue side, R2R, really transaction recording, who did what in finance, treasury, T&Es, and we have also inventory. So different cycles where for each one, you're going to have preset checks. That's really audit analytics, but each check going to come obviously with a list of exceptions here. And in the traditional world, you had to have your team investigate each one of these exceptions in order to get an insight out of it. And I feel like what's changing now with AI is that you can leverage AI to do a first round of investigation for you and gather insights that you want to know about the specific sites that you're auditing. So let's take an example. Here I'm filtering on procure to pay. So we have about 50 or so checks in procure to pay that are related on purchase entry, on PO, on supplier master data, a lot of different topics in there. If you take an example, let's take this one, invoices paid earlier than supplier standard payment term. What does that mean? Any invoice that you paid quicker than the payment term you negotiated with a vendor. It's a working capital problem, right? I have 26 exceptions here. So if I open this one, what basically I'm going to have is a list of exceptions. That's already great, right? But then for each one, I have to click on here, look at the detailed transaction from our ERP system. What is this invoice about? Who is the vendor? What was my payment term? And then complete my investigation and do that for every single exception here. Or option 2, I will book select that, export it, and send it to accounting, to the local accounting owner of this topic for my site. And this is when I feel like in the past, internal audit has been seen a little bit as a disruptor and has really got into the way of accounting performing their day-to-day job. So what now with AI you can do is that you can leverage insights, AI to directly get insights out of your data. So this is just an example of how we do it in Supervizor, but you could also just import a list of exceptions in your Copilot and ask for investigation. It works really similarly. What we've done here is that we created prompts that investigate for you all of these exceptions and the root causes in each ERP system in order to understand what is this exception about. For this specific control, what it means basically is that instead of sending 26 invoices to my local accounting person, I'm probably going to focus on this vendor and maybe these 4 invoices and maybe this other vendor with these 4 invoices, and focus on why are we paying, you know, half quicker than our actual payment term? Do we have a discount for that? Can you negotiate one? So conversations are a little bit more oriented into how can we do a better job together at working capital and preserving cash in our company, rather than just investigation of each exception. That's just a little AI example that can go the long way and just save time for your team and protect your relationship with the first line. So first example. The second example that I think is super cool and pretty interesting to explore together is how do you summarize all of this information for me to drive insights on a global basis. So the former way of doing that basically was to say, okay, I have like 10 different entities in here. I have a lot of checks. Okay, let's build a dashboard that summarize, you know, my anomalies, my problems globally. That's a good idea, and that's generally like a very good point to start, but you can go way further with AI now. So not only you have dashboarding capabilities per topic, you can drill down to the root causes or to the sites that are affected for your audit analytics program, but you can also connect all of this data to an AI that can enable you to ask questions in natural language. So this is how we do it in Supervizor. We have what we call Explore, like a little AI conversational tool in here for you to ask about any ERP data that you have in Supervizor, all of your sites, and all of the exceptions you surfaced. Super powerful. You can also have it directly in your Copilot or in your cloud environment, whatever the enterprise AI you're using. We've built examples of little prompts in there, you know, that can direct you into what you want to look at. But, you know, this one is maximum exposure by entity. So this one is purely summarizing all of your risk per ERP and sites. This one is an executive summary. Use all of the exceptions detected in the routines to build an audit report. One of the things that I think is pretty cool is, you know, adapting a prompt to your to a specific persona. So I'm copy pasting for you. I'm sparing you my spelling time for this one, but let's use this. So one of the things that I've asked this AI is that we have an audit in Brazil, and I'm going to meet with the CFO. So what are the key insights I should be aware of and I can present to this local CFO in order to address any financial risks that are locally happening in Brazil, and potentially identify already some key insights in my data pre-audit that we want to address during the audit. So here, what the AI agent is doing is basically retrieving all of my ERP data from Brazil, all of my anomalies detected by Supervizor on all of these checks that I showed you on different topics, and then preparing a report for a local CFO. So it can look at different ways. You can dialogue and keep on editing it, and we're gonna see what it gives me live. It can include dashboards. So here, it also include a little Brazil map, but here basically what it's giving me is little copy paste reports for my CFO from last year data for this specific entity, saying and pulling out 3 key drivers that I need to discuss with this local CFO. So I have a problem in users in this ERP system for sure. Locally in Brazil, I have SOD violation. I have unauthorized user accesses. So that's definitely something maybe I want to mention to the local CFO when I go there next week. Second topic, I have payment process weaknesses. So I have big stake of P2P weaknesses that I need to correct. For each one, it goes further than just pointing you into the right control points. It analyzes the actual findings and tells you what it thinks is top priority. So, challenge that obviously with your skills, with your team. Don't take it for granted, but it can really facilitate a first level of investigation And very quickly, something that I think is also pretty cool, I'm going to show you, I typed it yesterday just to try, is in order to justify your audit work, you can ask AI to compare data before and after an audit to see if management locally has implemented your recommendations. So here I'm looking at an SOD audit that I did last year in July. Can see there were a lot of findings before, and I can see they started a little bit of remediation. I have less and less findings. We try to really push our clients to do this type of analysis because it justifies really the work of internal auditors. It justifies the process that you improved for your first line, with your first line, and all over, participate into this new role of strategic advisory you wanna reach. So I'm gonna stop here because I see like we have 40 minutes left, and I want to keep time for your questions, Joe. But this was just two AI examples.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. Wanted to clarify one quick thing that we did get a few questions on. I sent everybody looking for a version of the slides in the handout section. It's actually a new version of GoToWebinar. It's called the materials section. You're going to look for a document with a paperclip, so you can find a PDF version of the slides there. So we did get some really good questions. I'm going to start with the first one that we got from several of our attendees. And it's probably not a surprising one. It's one that both of you probably hear all the time, and it's that privacy issue. We're dealing with very sensitive data. How concerned do we need to be, especially if we're dealing with some of the publicly available AI tools like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini? Trent, could you talk a little bit about that data privacy, data sensitivity issue? Lots of folks are saying, well, hey, I work for a government agency. Data security is of the utmost importance. How do we get around that?
You go to your AI governance policy and see what it says. If you don't have one, that is an immediate audit finding, in my opinion. Like I wouldn't do anything else. I go, do we have one? Nope. Cool. Here's a finding. We have to have one. But yeah, if it's a public thing, like steer very clear of it. So if it's not within your enterprise, if someone hasn't mentioned like your enterprise, whatever application or AI tool, LLM, I would definitely steer clear of that. I can't really speak to the supervisor side of things, though. I would assume, Celia.
We're an external vendor, so we go through technology acceptance process. And so what I've been seeing a lot on the vendor side is a lot of AI questionnaire coming up. Like you need to implement an AI questionnaire on top of your data policy, on top of the DPA you sign with vendors. You need to understand how they perform and use AI. Do they use your data to train models or not? There are a couple of guidelines that you need to check. And as an internal auditor, it's kind of your job to make sure procurement has that handed now for any new vendor.
Good point.
Very interesting question here that I'll just put out to both of you, or whoever wants to tackle it in the few minutes that we have. And I'm going to ask you to keep your answers somewhat brief. Maybe we can get through a few of these. Would you expect a separate AI strategy, or should it be incorporated into the internal audit strategy itself, or adapt the business-wide strategy?
Yeah.
Where does it sit?
Org strategy, IA strategy feeds into org strategy. AI strategy relative to internal audit feeds into the overall audit strategy. Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. Another good question regarding external auditors. What approach or best practices do companies need to get their external auditors comfortable with reliance on an AI to automate SOX testing beyond just an accelerator?
We've heard a little feedback on this. Celia, have you heard stuff from your clients? I'm sure they're asking the same question.
It's really a case-by-case basis, depending on the relationship and their process. SOC 1 help, but there is a lot of testing that needs to be done. You have to have log reports. So we go from a case-by-case basis. There is no magic word where your external auditors can rely on your program. But I feel like we're getting there. So it has to be modernized. So I think the IA is going to push on that point too.
I think if nothing else, I would ask before you start developing anything related to those, I would go to the partner and go, this is what we're going to do. This is the plan. You sign off on this and we'll do it. If not, then we're not going to do it, because you don't want to build something and then them come in and go, that's super cool. We can't rely on that.
Yeah.
Last question, in just a few last moments here. But it is a question I wanted to answer because we did get it from a few folks, and they're really concerned. The big concern that I'm seeing as we get these questions in is they're worried about the errors. And there was a lot of talk about the hallucinations kind of early on. Is that problem being solved? Like how big is that problem? How much do they need to worry about it? It seems like for a lot of people, it was the reason they're just not using it.
Yep, that's where human in the loop comes into play, especially on the audit and documentation side and judgment and all that kind of good stuff. So that's my 10-second answer, but Celia, I'll let you close this out.
The errors I face on a daily basis are the false positive problems when it comes to exceptions, and that is done with research, trial and error, exceptions, adapting your script, and that's why data analytics is still very much accurate, and you cannot just delegate everything to AI. So everything insights, AI, anything really needs to be accurate, need a strong data layer and strong scripts on top of it.
Fantastic. Well, I want to really thank both of you for some really wonderful insights here. You did an awesome job covering this material. So thanks so much to our speakers. It's Trent Russell. He's founder of Greenskies Analytics, and also check out the Audit Podcast. And Celia Viguier, who's U.S. General Manager for Supervizor. Also, I want to thank our co-host today, Supervizor. That's with a Z. Don't forget that. Supervizor is an AI audit analytics platform that connects directly to any ERP, runs hundreds of pre-built audit routines to flag anomalies and control gaps, and uses AI to turn findings into real business recommendations. Please check out our own website. That's internalaudit360.com. We are the independent resource for all things audit. You can find a way to subscribe to our free newsletter. That's every 2 weeks if you don't get that already. Just to recap, if we didn't get to your questions, we'll do our best to answer them by email. And we'll be sending a link to a video version and a copy of the slides. We'll also send a CPE certificate to anyone who's earned it by email. Please allow a day or so to receive those. Also, your feedback is important to us. At the conclusion of this webinar in just a moment, you'll see an evaluation form. If you could please take a few moments to fill that out so we can improve the webinars that we offer to you. Thanks again to Supervizor. Thanks to our speakers for giving us some great insights. And thanks to all of you, our attendees. We really appreciate you being here. This concludes our webinar, and I hope you have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.